Okay, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at something absolutely fascinating. We're going to examine an ancient text called the Sammādiṭṭhi Sutta. And what's really incredible about this source is that you shouldn't think of it as just some dusty philosophical discourse. Through the words of Venerable Sāriputta, who is basically the master diagnostician of the text, it reads exactly like a brilliant, logically structured diagnostic manual for the human mind. I mean, if you've ever wondered how to systematically trace the origins of human dissatisfaction, you are in the exact right place. Let's dive into this.
So, the entire premise here centers around a concept called right view, or Sammādiṭṭhi. But the source frames right view not as some mystical, hard-to-reach state, but as a highly practical, step-by-step process. Honestly, it's a lot like peeling back the layers of a giant onion. To find ultimate peace, the text suggests we have to relentlessly trace our suffering, layer by layer, back to its absolute foundational roots.
You might be wondering, where does a diagnostic journey like that even begin? Well, it starts at the very first, outermost layer of our psychological onion. Because before we can understand the deep, hidden workings of the mind, we have to look at what we actually do on a daily basis. Venerable Sāriputta instructs us to just start by simply observing our surface-level actions.
To do that, the text explicitly outlines 10 unwholesome actions, and these range from obvious physical acts like stealing, to verbal acts like harsh gossip, all the way down to mental acts like covetousness. Establishing right view begins with this really clear, objective categorization. It's about learning to distinguish these destructive behaviors from their wholesome opposites. It's basically the baseline of our diagnosis.
Now, once we've identified what these unwholesome actions actually are, the text pushes us to ask the next logical question. Because, it's not enough to just know what we're doing wrong. We have to ask, but why do we commit these actions? What are the internal forces driving these surface behaviors in the first place?
And that brings us to the next vital step in the diagnosis, the underlying psychological motivators, which the text calls the roots of action. This is where we really start moving from the outside in.
It's amazing how cleanly the text contrasts these motivators. It says that every single destructive action we take grows from one of three unwholesome roots: greed, anger, or delusion. So the next time you completely snap at someone, ask yourself, is anger driving this? Recognizing these foundational roots in real time, that is the true essence of right view at this stage.
But, of course, the text doesn't just stop there. Let's move to the next layer and see how this builds. Venerable Sāriputta takes this analytical approach and applies a medical-style diagnostic framework to literally everything that feeds our existence. The text calls these our nutrients.
The source identifies 4 types of food we consume. There's actual physical food, sure, but then there's sensory contact, mental volition, and consciousness itself. It runs every single one of these through a strict diagnostic matrix. What causes them? Craving. What cures them? The Eightfold Path. It's wild because the text is essentially arguing that we literally gorge ourselves on mental contact and ideas the exact same way we do a heavy meal.
So we keep seeing this word craving pop up as a root cause. The absolute crucial point we have to figure out is how exactly does craving trigger the cycle of suffering? The text doesn't leave us hanging. It actually provides a really precise mechanical answer to this.
To answer that, the source introduces a concept known as dependent origination. And please don't think of this as some abstract philosophy. It's presented as a literal chain reaction. It explains how one specific mental state, inevitably and mechanically, triggers the exact next mental state, like dominoes falling.
And it's a pretty devastating sequence when you look at it. Step 1 is craving. When craving intensifies, it causes step 2, clinging. Clinging then solidifies into step 3, becoming, which leads directly into step 4, birth. And, well, the inevitable result of birth is step 5, aging and death, bringing with it sorrow and despair. It is a relentless, totally mechanical cycle.
I really want to draw your attention to step 2 of that sequence for a second, which is clinging, or upadana. The source specifically defines clinging as 4 distinct attachments: attachment to sensual pleasures, attachment to views or opinions, attachment to rules and observances, and most profoundly, attachment to the doctrine of self. I mean, just think about how much anger today comes simply from us desperately clinging to our political or social views. It's exactly this clinging that rigidly locks us into the cycle of suffering.
Right, so, if craving leads to clinging, we have to peel back yet another layer. What sets craving into motion in the first place? The text reveals the preceding sequence here.
We start with our six senses. The senses make contact with the world. That contact produces a feeling, which can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And it is entirely based on that feeling that craving arises.
And here is a truly surprising, totally fascinating insight from the text. When it lists the six senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, it includes the mind. That's right, the mind isn't treated as the self here, it's treated exactly like a physical sense organ. Just as the eye touches light, the mind literally touches ideas, and that generates feelings that immediately spark craving.
Going even deeper, the text explains that these senses rely on name and form, which are just the basic mental and physical components of our being. Think of it kind of like the software and hardware of a computer. And this hardware and software rely entirely on the presence of our consciousness just to boot up.
Okay, let's take stock. We have traced surface actions to greed, greed to craving, craving to contact, contact to the senses, and the senses all the way down to consciousness itself. We are digging incredibly deep into the diagnostic manual right now. So the ultimate question is, what lies at the absolute bottom of this cycle?
We have finally arrived at the absolute root causes of human suffering, at least according to the Sammādiṭṭhi Sutta. Beneath consciousness, beneath all mental formations, lie two foundational concepts: ignorance and the deep taints.
Let's define the first one, ignorance, or avidya. The text makes a profound distinction here. Ignorance is absolutely not a lack of IQ or worldly knowledge. It is explicitly defined as not knowing the Four Noble Truths. Essentially, because we just don't understand the mechanics of the machine we're trapped in, we just keep getting caught in its gears.
And finally, here is the ultimate bedrock, the taints, or asavas. The text identifies these as deep-seated impurities, specifically sensual desire, the desire for becoming, and ignorance itself. And what is absolutely mind-blowing about this framework is the unbreakable feedback loop it reveals. The source states that the taints cause ignorance, but ignorance causes the taints. They literally feed each other at the very bottom of our psychological makeup.
So if the actual root of our suffering is this self-sustaining, vicious loop of ignorance and deep-seated impurities, we have to ask, is there a cure? Can this endless loop actually be broken?
Thankfully, the diagnostic manual doesn't just diagnose the disease and leave us hanging. It transitions directly into the ultimate prescription. The final section of the text provides the practical treatment plan specifically designed to cure the mind and sever this chain reaction once and for all.
The prescribed cure is the Noble Eightfold Path. That's right view, resolve, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. The text is totally uncompromising here. This comprehensive 8-spoke tool set is the exact, literal wrench needed to dismantle the cycle at every single link we've just discussed.
And this perfectly illustrates the cascading victory that the text promises. By applying this path, you directly target and destroy the deepest taints. When the taints are destroyed, ignorance is destroyed. And without ignorance, the entire complex structure of craving, clinging, and suffering completely unravels and collapses like a house of cards. We've journeyed all the way from our surface-level actions down into the deepest, hidden feedback loops of the mind, and finally to the cure itself. It's an incredibly systematic, brilliant way to look at the human experience. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought as you look at your own life through the lens of this ancient diagnostic tool. If you could sever the root of your own suffering today, which link would you break first?